Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a senior and accomplished professional from the world of public relations and branding from New Delhi, India, Upasna Dash. Upasna, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. Very excited to be here.
Thank you. Upasna is the Chief Executive Officer and founder of Jajabor Brand Consultancy. So, Upasna, began your career at 18 with no formal training in PR and went on to work with global brands. What were the most defining lessons from those early years that shaped your thinking about communication?
Great. Thanks, Ashutosh. Very exciting to be in this world, in this field.
Hmm.
And my journey started when I was much younger. Growing up as a kid in the 90s, we did not have entertainment, Netflix, and so many avenues. Like many other children, we had books. And as a kid, I struggled in school, and my grandfather actually made me fall in love with the language and with stories by reading it out to me. And I realized that storytelling is truly the most powerful way to put ideas into the world. And as I grew up, I saw that shape the way I look at the world. Whether it's politics, institutions, religion, all of it actually circumvents around storytelling.
Hmm.
So I always knew I wanted to do something there. But obviously, when you're 18 and I was still completing my studies, balancing, building something in the field of marketing and PR while studying, it was very challenging. But I think, one or two things that really shaped the way I thought about it was that this concept of storytelling is not 20 years old or 50 years old, it's thousands of years old. As long as human beings have been around, they have used stories to communicate with each other and more importantly to shape behavior. Whether you're trying to sort of build a country or a company or a religion or an institution, you need storytelling. So for me, that was like the first big sort of impact, saying this is the purpose of what I want to do. And
Hmm.
second, I think the most challenging thing was, see, I started building when before the startup scene was there, right? It wasn't very encouraged, it wasn't very mainstream. So just having the courage to step out of your comfort zone and take that first step was truly challenging, but it is also what kind of gave me the advantage of building a company like this. So yeah, those were some very important lessons early
Amazing.
on.
Amazing. You speak about being driven by stories that shape lives. Was there a particular moment or story that made you realize that this was your true calling?
Wow, so many. And the most beautiful part about being on this journey of entrepreneurship is that every day, every month is a different experience. We never stop learning. But for me, I think, while building a company is challenging no matter what. But I think the moments that really make it worth it is when you realize that it's not just solving for yourself or for your clients, you're actually solving for other people by community. One of my favorite moments at Jajabor has been a couple of years ago when I was starting the company. We make it a point to, like we said, onboard talent, especially from tier two, tier three cities. We had a young girl who joined us from a very remote community in Northeast. I had to actually interview with her parents saying, please give her permission to travel. When she came in, we take something like a salary account for granted. She was given a salary account and she got her salary, something that we don't even flinch about.
Hmm.
But I still remember the day she got it. Her entire community and her extended family were on video call and said she was the first woman in her community to have her own bank account. So just having that bank account empowered her and in return empowered so many young girls who then left their community to go and get jobs. For me, that was the most gratifying moment, one of the most gratifying moments of building this company,
Hmm.
really giving opportunities to people. And even something so small can actually shape an entire community.
Hmm. Amazing. Let's now talk about Jajabor Brand Consultancy. But my first
Yeah.
question is, what is the meaning of Jajabor and what does Jajabor stand for?
It's a great question. I always get that. It's very close to my heart. So Jajabor in Assamese means nomad. It is actually inspired by my grandfather's favorite song, Bhupen Hazarika's song. And what that song basically kind of tells you is that, all of us are nomads. We're just passing through this world. But the second thing that he says is, he describes in the beginning of the song these beautiful cities, Rome, Vienna, Paris. And then at the end of the song, he says that got there because I was describing these cities to you in my song.
Hmm.
And that to me is the power of Jajabor and storytelling, which is why it's called Jajabor.
Hmm.
We use storytelling and narrative to really make people's minds travel to places they haven't been before.
Hmm.
And like we said, we're all nomads just passing through this world. So that's what Jajabor means.
Amazing. You founded the company with the intent to rewire PR.
Right.
What was broken in traditional PR that you wanted to fundamentally change?
You know, I still believe, I think PR is a very underrated tool. I don't think many people know how to truly use it to its potential.
Correct.
Before I tell you, what was broken, very simply, what is the value of PR, right? Like we say, when you're trying to buy an iPhone, on the right hand, if you have an ad, and on the left hand, you have a review. The ad will give you all the specs and the pricing. But as a customer, you will only look at that ad for awareness. But
Mm,
you will look at the review and then make the purchase because you will trust that review. That's the credibility of PR.
mm,
So I think PR as a fundamental function has always been around, has always been important.
mm,
But I think what I personally saw as broken was that most PR outcomes are very disconnected from the business outcomes.
mm,
And luckily, in the beginning of my career, I worked with so many startup founders and VCs. I realized most business owners just want to do things that has a direct or a very prominent impact on their final business goal. So that's what
mm,
we wanted to fix. So it's
mm,
not just about, looking good on magazines and showing up in lists and getting awards. What do we do that can actually help a company meet its really serious business goals, which could be raising funds, launching a product, hiring talent, anything, right? So our goal was that, and that is what I thought was missing or a little broken, at least in the Indian market, where I think there's phenomenal campaigns and phenomenal work, but
mm.
it is quite disconnected from the business outcome most times. So we start there. We start where the business outcome begins.
Very interesting. You describe yourself as a growth hacker rather than a
Yeah,
communicate rather than a conventional communications agency. What does this mean
right.
in practice for your clients? And give me an example if you can.
Sure. So this kind of is the bedrock of what we do at Jajabor. Like I said earlier, for us, we use comms to move real business metrics. And growth hacking has been sort of at the core of it because most brands that come to us, they're looking at some spurt of growth, either in talent or customer acquisition or fundraising. And that's where we said we get embedded. And, we do this in very interesting ways. Without giving away the secret sauce, I can tell
Yeah.
you is that first understand the business goal. We understand what the audience is. Most importantly are the metrics. We actually co-own the metrics with the brand, right? So we're actually looking at the needle move, not in terms of number of stories or number of impressions. We're saying, for example, without giving you a name, we had this amazing Japanese VC entering the India market a couple of years ago, which was already very crowded. And I asked him, what's your business goal for India in year one? And he said, I want high quality deals and I want people to discover us and then I want to convert them. And that's it. Let's do that. So we went and we actually built a campaign where within 48 hours of them launching in India, his funnel was full, right? And that to me is a business metric, man. Or a very famous Ayurveda brand that we worked with for years. We actually embedded them in all these organic Ayurveda conversations to a point where, PM Modi talked about the brand in Man Ki Baat. That to me is more powerful than just getting an article out, right?
Correct.
To reach to the most powerful medium, which is PM Modi's Man Ki Baat, is organic. Money
Yeah,
can't buy these things. So
absolutely.
that's the kind of work that thrived at doing. It is very hard. It's a Herculean task.
Hmm.
But that's kind of where our magic is.
Amazing. How do you define the role of communication in business growth beyond visibility and media coverage? And the example you gave me of Monkey Bath is just absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're asking this because, like we said, that's another very sort of big myth, right? PR is one of the most underrated and the most valuable tool to truly move businesses in a very ROI driven manner. You
Correct.
don't really have to spend too much money. It's not heavy spend focus as advertising or social media. And I feel now in 2026, there's a school of people that believe that, oh, now that AI has come, we'll get displaced. I actually think the opposite. In a world of, hyper information, customers want to look at brands that they can trust.
Hmm.
And trust and credibility is what PR builds that nothing else can. So that's one. And second, I think communications in general has become very important. And communication, not just between brand and customer, but leader and employees and stakeholders, those are all comms pieces. And I ran this company bang in the middle of COVID. And our company grew 200% in COVID,
Hmm.
while a lot of people were struggling. And the only thing that we realized that works is that you have to use communication for the right reason and the right way, and it can solve pretty much all your problems.
Hmm.
So I feel like PR is just going to get more and more integrated, but it's going to be harder to achieve results because now we're not just competing with other brands, we're competing with hyper information and noise that AI is flooding the internet and the consumer forums with.
Hmm. Amazing. You're also known for your data-driven and business impact-led approach. How did this methodology evolve over time?
It evolves every single day. But like we said, what we're very clear about is, and to your earlier question, what we were trying to fix is how can PR contribute to business goals? How can it actually get a seat at the table while
Mm,
decision making and building a brand? So our methodology is actually quite deep rooted, and it is actually customized for each brand because each brand has a different audience and a different measurement of success. A
mm,
SaaS company does not care about impressions on its LinkedIn page. It actually cares about B2B sales. A young founder does not care about being on a Forbes list as much as he cares about actually raising that pivotal round of funding. So for us, the main thing to nail is the right metrics, and then we use PR and communications to move those metrics. And
mm,
the hardest part of these metrics is measurement because PR historically has been very difficult to measure. If tomorrow you get on the cover of Time magazine, there is no way for you to tell the next day whether the orders have come in because you have been on the cover of Time
correct.
magazine. Maybe somebody comes to you 6 months later.
Mm,
So we spend a lot of time in therefore measuring, micro transactions, macro transactions, and third party validation. So every brand actually gets a customized dashboard with the right metrics, the right measurement, and the right stakeholders.
mm. You just spoke about the dashboard, and that is an interesting segue to my next question. Your industry first qualitative dashboard has gained strong adoption. What gap did you
Yeah.
see that led you to create it?
So, when we started the business, my biggest struggle was not really onboarding clients. It was onboarding clients and convincing them to rewire PR.
Mm,
Most people that we went to, they said, okay, PR job is to get us visibility and get us impressions.
mm,
So we actually had to do a lot of work and show them a lot of case studies to be able to say, okay, let's look at a new dashboard. So this
mm,
dashboard, like I'm glad after 9 years of doing this, more and more companies have adopted it.
mm,
But this dashboard, like we said, is customized. And it's actually the bedrock of how you do things. We always tell our clients, like if you're an athlete and you want to test whether you're doing well or not, you have to measure your timing. You have to
mm,
measure the rate of success. You can't just keep running and say, I'm a great athlete. So
mm,
this dashboard is done for that. And earlier we used to refresh that dashboard for clients every 6 to 12 months. Unfortunately or fortunately, we now have to do it every 3 months
mm,
because where your customer is consuming information or making that transaction is dramatically evolving.
mm,
So it gets customized every couple of months. It's very transparent. It's easy to track, and that's kind of made the biggest difference in the way we do comms.
mm. You have worked across 50 plus verticals and over 200 brands. How do you ensure depth of understanding across such a vast and diverse range of brands and companies?
I think we're still learning every day, but two things that have helped us is see, the core of comms is pretty templatized and the way we do it, right? Because we have like this, we actually have like an internal, brand formula and a mathematical equation actually to figure out the right kind of dashboard and the metrics. So that kind of is standard. The second part is harder, where every time a client comes into our agency, we stop calling it a client. So it is inevitable that the person working on it will say, my brand need this, my brand needs that. So I think really, coming into the brand and making it your own makes you feel deeply about it. And because of the nature of the work we do, we have no option but to be that deep rooted. If you're trying to move a business goal, you better know the business damn well. So there's a lot of learning. I think our clients have been fantastic. They gave us a lot of exposure and inroad. And I think number three is, you learn so much on the job when you're actually representing a company. You need to know what they're doing inside out. You need to understand the industry. So it kind of neatly kind of turns it up. And we have some fantastic people on our team that kind of take this as a challenge. But we spend so much time in just trying to understand the company. We'll go meet the client. We'll meet the client's client. We'll meet the stakeholder. We'll meet people who joined. We'll meet people who've left. A lot of
Mm,
data collection, a lot of learning.
well said. You were giving when we a few minutes back, you were giving the example of this young girl who joined you, and for her bank account was a very,
Yeah.
very important factor.
Yeah.
You place strong emphasis on mentoring young talent, especially
Yeah.
from tier two and tier three cities.
Yeah.
Why is this so important to you?
Quite honestly, it's because I am also from a tier two, tier three city, and I made it because I had some incredible mentors.
Mm,
Um, and I really feel like, that the talent that is across the country in tier two, tier three cities, it's phenomenal. See, I mean, we have talent everywhere, but I am mostly very excited about young women trying to come out because when you give a woman an opportunity, you're actually giving her community and her family an opportunity. And to be honest, some of our best players have been these people, right? They've literally, after school or college, left their hometowns, come here, worked so hard to make their place and like sit across the table. So for me, it's a very personal thing because I was this person. I was born in a very small town, very simple middle class family, and I made it here because I had incredible mentors. So it's just a little way for us to pay it forward.
Amazing. My next question for you, Upasna, is what skills do you believe the next generation of communication professionals must develop
Yeah.
to stay relevant, especially now that there is so much technology that has come in?
Yeah, great question. 2026, 2025 have been incredible. They've been so seismic in terms of change, right? So I think three, four very key things. One is we have to be very agile. I'm learning this too the hard way, where, like we said, we used to predict change every 3 to 6 months. Now it's possibly happening every month. What was relevant last month is suddenly not relevant anymore.
Yeah.
So you have to have a lot of agility. Number two, we're doing a lot of work around adoption of AI. Technology is not something to fear. Technology is something that you have to integrate. For example, in the 90s when the internet came, a lot of people said the same thing. Oh, will we get obsolete? What will happen to us? I think technology is made to make your life more efficient and optimized. So
Mm,
all comms people have to, you cannot ignore technology anymore. You have to understand, you have to adapt it, you have to work around it. And number three is I really would want all professionals, especially in the comms space, to understand this. Stop thinking of yourself as just the storyteller. Think of yourself as the brand and the business. So you have to be
mm,
very focused on the business and not just the art of providing, narrative or story. But agility is definitely on top of the list and never stop learning. I think that's a lifelong one.
Well said. You have worked closely with startups, VCs, unicorns, and think tanks.
Yes.
How does working across such a large ecosystem influence your own strategic thinking?
It's possibly the best part of running this business. It's like having an intellectual buffet of ideas and founders and mentors. And we've got such fantastic clients who've, not just turned out to be partners, but mentors. It's very challenging, right? Because we're constantly having to see the same problem or the same product from different lenses. A founder and a VC, or let's say a policy professional, will look at the same problem or the same opportunity in different ways. So it keeps us on our toes. But I think it has made us as an agency and us as a company extremely integrated. If you come and tell me, hey, listen, I want to build an agriculture product, we can tell you, what to do from each lens as a founder, as an investor, as a government professional. And that to us is very, very exciting. And I think the most beautiful part is I have learned so much of working with these founders. As a founder myself, some of the biggest and best learnings that I've executed in my company have actually come from the founders that I worked with. So for me, I feel like it's been a pretty great ecosystem where people have come together, and just by the virtue of working with each other you learn so much. So it's been a fantastic experience
I
uh,
agree.
so many stakeholders.
I agree with you. Upasna, you also serve on panels and juries relating to entrepreneurship and women leadership.
Right.
How do you view the current state of women entrepreneurship in India?
As a woman entrepreneur myself, there are challenges. I think there is a very, very wide gap that we need to overcome. But
Hmm,
what makes me happy is that I think it's getting easier and better.
hmm,
Every year, every month, it's getting better. When I started my business 9 years ago, you won't believe, people refuse to take a check. It happens to me till now when it's just my signature. Small things like they refuse to validate the check saying, no, we need a man's signature. So,
wow.
I think the problems or the challenges for women entrepreneurs, see, all entrepreneurs, male or female, have the same challenges with the business. The
Correct.
only difference is women have institutional challenges before they even get into the business challenge,
Hmm,
right? A male founder will not think about, can I take a cab at 10 in the night to go to a meeting and then win the meeting? He will just think about winning the meeting. The girl has to think about, is it safe? Is it okay? How will I come back? And then think about acing the meeting. So I feel like while I think the government is doing some great work in, building skilling and, enabling entrepreneurs, we have a long way to go. But what's most exciting is, oh my God, these young women have so much fire, so much resilience. Back in my day, we were scared of the risks. We didn't have so much institutional support. Building your own business was not mainstream. I think that's changed dramatically, at least in urban areas. And the women that are building these businesses are fantastic.
I
They're
agree.
going to be leaps and bounds ahead of what we've ever done.
Absolutely. I love the way you say back in my days. If I start talking about back in my days, then it's about 40 years before you.
Yeah.
Uh, Upasana, my next question is how do you see the future of an integrated communication agency in India over the next few years?
it's going to be a very exciting time, but it's also going to be a very challenging time. Yeah,
Mm.
I'm so glad you used the word integrated because that is the future of communication. A
Correct.
customer today does not get up and say, "Okay, I'm only going to look at Instagram or read a paper." He will go on Instagram while reading a paper and listening to his Spotify playlist and possibly, reading an email. So you have to talk to that customer across platforms simultaneously. So the
Mm.
future of comms has to be integrated, number one. But I think authenticity is also very important. I think the customers also getting smarter, right? In the world of technology, you have to build a really credible relationship with that person. So I think comms is going to get very integrated,
Mm.
but I think we're going to evolve. If we're no longer going to work in silos, we will have to work absolutely head on with each other.
Mm.
And it's going to be, battle for the fittest and, survival of the
Correct.
best.
Correct.
But what's exciting is also the amount of people coming online in India, right? We are a mobile first generation, especially in tier two cities. Bharat and the resurgence of that is going to be fantastic. It's going to shape the way we do communication. So I see local
Absolutely.
languages playing a very big role.
Amazing. Time for two more questions for you. If a founder is building a startup today with limited resources, what communication priorities should they focus on first?
Wow, this is so important. And this is the biggest mistake that founders make. Founders believe that you need to be of a certain size with a certain budget to start investing in comms. Not true at all. My biggest piece of advice to young founders is start from date zero. You can actually do $0 spend comms. And then the most important comms you do at that age is you actually start with internal communication. Most founders forget that your first stakeholders are the employees that are working with you. There has to be a communication strategy between you and them. Even if you're three people, you need to find a way to communicate with them. One. Number two, today we work with unicorns and Fortune 500 companies. The best brands are the most iconic PR brands are those where the founder is involved in the brand from day one to the end.
Mm.
You can get a team to execution delegate, but that brand has to come from the founder itself. So this has to be one of your top three or four priorities. You can dial up or down the resourcing, but even if you have $0, it doesn't cost money to set up a LinkedIn page or a free Instagram page and start talking to people. It just doesn't cost money. Yes, if you want to do something large scale, it costs money, but start small, start from day zero. The second or third function you need to build in the company has to be comms.
Mm. And my last question for you, and this is for you now. Um, as you look back at your amazing journey so far, I wanted to ask you, how has this journey of entrepreneurship changed you as a leader and as an individual?
It has changed me completely and
Mm.
dramatically. Most founders you speak to will tell you the same thing that entrepreneurship is not a job. You
Mm.
don't switch off after 5 o'clock or before 9 o'clock. It's a mindset and it is a lifestyle. You're an entrepreneur from the moment you open your eyes to the moment you go to sleep.
Mm.
Every wake of life is seen through that lens. So it's changed me as a person, it's changed me as a leader. I think two big learnings from that is no matter how good you are at what you do, you cannot do anything without a great team and support from friends and family.
Mm.
The way this company runs, a major chunk is honestly thanks to the wonderful people that work. So I think building the right team and having the right support is equally important.
Mm.
And, as a leader, I feel like it has taught me, of course, patience, resilience, empathy. And most people think, oh, now that we've built the company for 10, 12 years, we know it all. No, I
Mm.
think the most important thing is to keep learning and keep learning from the people who are younger than you,
Mm.
right? So for me, that's been a very important highlight. And now I know, for example, once a founder, always a founder. It's very difficult to switch it off. I think it is impossible to switch off that side of your brain and move on to something. So it's been a life-changing experience, and I think I'm an entrepreneur for life.
Fascinating. Fascinating. And on that note, Upasna, I just want to say what a fascinating conversation this has been with you. As you were talking, I went back four and a half decades when I started working with ITC. And I remember we used to be told when it comes to communication and public relations, make sure that you release bad news on Friday and good news on Monday, because in those days there were only newspapers and
Exactly.
bad news wasn't picked up on a weekend. But today, with the 24 hours media, PR is even much more difficult. Yes, we covered some very, very
Absolutely.
interesting thoughts from you on almost like a PR 101, which I'm sure a lot of our
Yes.
viewers and listeners will gain a lot of points and
Right.
pointers from you. Thank you again for speaking
Thank
to me and good luck to you.
Thank you so much, Ashutosh. It's been such a pleasure being here, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.